we should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
I think that all religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into the UK either.
Hold on. Hold on a second. Hold on. That's funny. Hold on. Can you show me a single Christian country that you would say mistreats women, right?
America.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We had a female woman vice president. We had a female vice president.
Oh my God, he's doing democratic identity politics right now. Oh, we're the sexists. I'll have you know that we had a female vice president. So, checkmate. Oh, if you don't know the background to this one's actually fucking hilarious. Charlie Kirk a couple days ago made some posts on Twitter about how he is just like so happy to be back in America and what a fucking shithole England is, and they don't have free speech, and it's just like such a terrible place. And then I was like, that's weird for him to go on an anti-UK rant when you just know he was brought over there in the best possible conditions. Like, you probably flew first class, you stayed at a really nice hotel room, you were granted all these lavish per diems, all this kind of stuff. Like, if you were invited for a speaking session, then I think it's probably going to be one in which you were surrounded by colleagues who appreciate your work and that kind of stuff. But he came back really mad about this and then didn't post this entire discussion in full. Now, it's come out by Cambridge has posted the entire Q&A subsequently on their own website. And now a lot of people are saying this is the reason why Charlie Kirk didn't want the world to see it, because apparently it's pretty disastrous. So I'm going to skip right ahead to the Q&A section.
Great. Thank you.
You got to speak for about 27 minutes, I believe.
Yeah, the one.
He edited 40 minutes of video out of this. Wow. I wonder why.
Okay, thank you. Can we settle down, please? We're going to move on to our questions. Our first question is from Zenosa Zub from Sydney, Sussex. Come up and ask a question. Remember, you have the right of response.
I have quite a simple question for you. Now, I know you've debated Dean Withers on Jubilee before. I was wondering why you now refuse to engage with further debate with him.
Wait, hold on. First of all, he's coming on my show this summer, and let me get this straight. I flew 5,000 miles across the world to have you ask why I'm not going to debate a left-wing YouTuber.
Well, I mean, he continuously tries to get your attention at your campus.
Yeah, right. Yeah, again,
you just ignore him.
I've debated him twice in the last calendar year. He's coming on my show this summer. Let me be clear. I came to Cambridge to have you ask me that.
Very defensive. I don't think it's an outrageous question. I flew 5,000 miles to be in this shithole so you could talk to me about Dean Withers.
I mean, you talk about freedom, and I'm just using my freedom of speech to ask you a simple question. No, you seem to be dodging it for some reason.
No, I've debated him twice in the last year, and he's coming on this summer for a long-form discussion, but is this what I can expect?
Yeah, he's making videos about you avoiding him on your campus debates.
Right, so let me tell you how this works. I do a campus event, like at Texas A&M University. I rent it out. I'm there for 3 hours. He shows up demanding to come up to the mic immediately, cutting in line of other students. It's not Joe Biden's America anymore. We can just...
So, he was rude? Is that it? He didn't follow the rules. All right? We have very set rules. This isn't a change my mind, okay? This is Turning Point USA. He's got to go through the proper channels. He's got to get in line. He's got to get approved. He's got to get vetted. He's got to have the pre-debate with the fake Charlie Kirk behind the scene to see how that guy fares. And if they survive all of those, then he can sign a release form and we can edit out the parts we don't like. It's very clear.
Cut in line and get whatever you want. So therefore, I say, excuse me, Dean, we'll talk at another time. He makes this YouTube video as if I'm scared to debate him, even though I debated him twice in the last year. Does that sufficiently answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next question is from James Loveridge from Anglo-Ruskin University.
Is this format supposed to kind of be reflective of like parliamentary sessions? Is that the idea?
So, firstly, thank you for coming here, Charlie. It's nice to meet you. So my question is, I am a Conservative, and I did back Trump in 2024, but I'm troubled that the GOP refuses to hold him accountable for his personal and legal failings. And how can we claim to stand for moral values and the Constitution while excusing behaviour that we condemn from the left? Isn't it the hypocrisy undermining our credibility, especially with the next generation?
What specifically do you have issue with?
Well, the countless things that he's done.
The what?
Stormy Daniels. You know, the bus interview that he put down to locker room talk. You know, his multiple legal...
Oh, I was going to say, Britain, they've moved way past this. In America, some people might not even recognize half of these, like, references.
Values, filings.
And what would you like to see them do? And you voted for this man. So, or,
no, I can't vote for him.
Whatever, you said you voted or whatever, I don't know.
Oh no, you're in a different country, Charlie. I'm sorry to tell you.
Plenty of Americans, I don't know, you said you supported him, so...
Yeah.
Is that correct? Maybe I'm putting...
Yeah, no, that's
you
correct.
Supported
yeah,
him, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I supported him on some of his policies and him, but a lot of Conservatives, I'm not saying you personally, but a lot of Conservatives refuse to call him out or critique him on anything and will ignore that straight away.
I mean, I critique him. He's a friend of mine. I might critique him. I don't think Canada should be the 51st state. We have enough liberals in America.
Okay, thank you.
He goes hard. Yeah. I mean, I've had some stern words for Trump. I don't think we should be involved in an incredibly damaging, destructive, and costly war that could result in, you know, millions of people dying. I've said that on record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
That's it. Okay. Well, I suppose you've answered my questions to your best abilities. Thank you.
Our next question is from Kai Bevon at Trinity Hall.
Right, so thank you for coming, Charlie. My question to you, I mean, I'm a medical student, and so I'm going to throw out the big A word. I know you get asked about it a lot, but I want to hear from you what your opinion is on abortion.
Life begins at conception.
But about abortion specifically, why do you think abortion's wrong specifically?
Well, you agree murder is wrong?
I agree. Okay, so this is where we get to the question, right? Because what is it about murder you say is wrong? Like, why is murder wrong?
Well, because it's a human being, not just because it has consciousness or because it's of a certain age, because it's a human.
Well, what is it that gives human being this moral worth?
Not its consciousness necessarily.
I didn't say it's consciousness.
I know that. I can imagine it's because it is a human being, because that has a soul.
And what is this soul? Where does...
Well, I mean, I don't know why you go down that line, because we just don't have any mechanism for measuring it. You know, we don't have the soul captures or the Ghostbuster guns. So like we can't like, he could say anything he wants, right? A soul is soup. A soul is a feeling. A soul is the kiss of God. A soul is what intrinsically makes us human. It doesn't matter what he says.
Where does this come from? This idea that it's...
Exactly. I mean, again, the Greeks postulated that it is the entirety of your being. Okay, you guys can laugh. I mean, it's true. I mean, every civilization has had a different belief, but agreed upon ethical monotheism, which is the creed of the West and what the birth certificate of my country articulates, is that every human being is more than just matter. It's more than just a clump of cells, but it also has an invisible element to you that will live beyond you.
Fine. So, I mean, can you say that comes from the Bible, or where else do you get that from?
Ethical monotheism, which is the creed of the West. And again, the Declaration of Independence mentions God 4 times. The founders were explicitly believed, not in a secular morality, but a divinely given one, of at least this idea that there is a God and you are not him. And let me ask you, what is the first stage of human development?
So the first, I mean, this is the thing, right? We can take it from the sperm being generated in the father and the oocyte being generated in the mother, right? They fuse at birth, conception, sorry. The only thing that happens at conception is these 2 cells fuse.
No, DNA is created. A zygote.
DNA is not created.
A DNA, no, that's not true. The DNA,
Charlie,
DNA coding at the zygote. Hold on, time out. Does a zygote have a unique marker?
Charlie,
Does a zygote have a unique marker?
You have to let me speak. You have to
But answer it, yes or
Charlie,
no. Does a zygote have a unique marker?
Define a unique marker.
Meaning, can you differentiate the DNA coding between the mother and the zygote if you examine it under a deoxyribonucleic acid analysis? Can you?
Only purely because the addition comes from the father.
Oh, so it is something different.
Charlie, DNA is not created. DNA is not created. You have, the father has his own genome, the mother has her own genome. They fuse. This is why you have the same characteristics, similar ones to your mother, similar ones to your father. That's why you have similar characteristics to your siblings. DNA is not created, right? So when you ask me, where does a human being come from? I can say to you, it starts at conception, but all conception is these two cells joining, right? But these two cells were created, the mother's cells were created long before, they were created when she was a fetus. So there's none of this DNA being produced, right? So we can't establish, the only thing that happens at conception is the
I gotta be honest, I have a series of like 4 or 5 tricks that I usually employ in this situation to try and, gotcha, but I don't know if they're gonna work here, so might have to pivot to something a little bit more serious. Let's get back to souls.
These two cells fuse. Now this idea that means that for some reason suddenly that moral worth comes in, but it wasn't there before when you had these two cells who had half the DNA. But suddenly there's a
Correct. Yes, something magical happens at that.
It's not magical, Charlie. We know.
I love that. Yes, correct. That's when the great stork comes from the sky and then riding on the back of the lizard's dream to deliver, of course, the miracle of life. And that's just a matter of science. I'm sure your books have spoken extensively about this.
About this.
Well, hold on.
Charlie.
Time out. Hold on.
Yeah, at least he admits it.
Promise
magic.
I'm not trying to score points. I'm not trying.
He's actually got an important point there I hadn't actually considered, though, which is, yes, that when, a woman is born, typically she's born with the eggs that she's going to be releasing on a monthly basis. But we never bring that into the equation when we're discussing, like, well, when does life begin? Well, it begins at conception. Okay, but so that's the arbitrary point to which you believe that there's a life that has begun, even though if we were to look at it, from a mechanical standpoint, or exactly what is taking place at a very, very small level, we have combining of the sperm and the egg, and then fusion of their genetic materials. The egg, of course, being in creation since that woman was born, and then the sperm being made by the male, I believe, like 72 days prior to his ejaculation. So what point do we really say that the conception started then? Because the timeline's kind of weird, right? If you think that like it took about 72 days from when the sperm was produced to when the man ejaculated it, and then you take the fact that the woman has lived with the eggs that she has and is releasing them on a regular schedule after a certain point, after she goes through puberty. Where do you align that idea that like it's the second the two of them touch, then the soul is magically breathed or ghosted into the body, I guess.
I'd like to score points on you. This is genuinely.
We call it the miracle of life for a reason. We've not been able to yet replicate human life development outside of the womb.
We call it the miracle of life because, yes, it's something beautiful, the ability to form a new.
Wait, didn't we grow goats successfully in a artificial womb, I think? Oh, we've done numerous animals. Never mind. Researchers have successfully grown premature lambs in an artificial room. It's something that we wouldn't put out of place in a sci-fi movie, a lamb inside of plastic bags with tubes and fluids helping it grow. But researchers have shown it's possible to nurture and protect lambs in late stages of gestation inside of an artificial room, technology that could become a lifesaver for many premature human babies in just a few years. Babies born at or before 25 weeks have a low survival outcome, and in the US it is the leading cause of infant mortality and morbidity. Just looking at them, it's immediately clear that they shouldn't be here yet. They're not ready. A doctor from the critically premature infants at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia said. But with an artificial womb, the babies can continue developing. Even just a few weeks of extra growing time can be the difference between severe health problems and a relatively healthy baby. These infants have an urgent need for a bridge between the mother's womb and the outside world. If we can develop an extra uterine system that helps support growth and organ maturation in only a few weeks, we can dramatically improve outcomes for extremely premature babies. Interesting. What have we grown with artificial wombs so far? Goats, lambs, mice as well. Yeah.
Magical.
It's not. You say magical as in, oh, it's beautiful, it's an incredible thing that happens, of course. But it's not incredible in the sense we don't know what's going on. There's no new DNA coming out of nowhere.
Hold on, but time out. Isn't there a separate DNA, though, than the mother? Like,
Yes, from the father.
okay, yes, but then but it's not the father's DNA either. A new coding is created.
Charlie.
You are a blend of the two. And so when did your life begin?
Okay, so
When did your life begin?
Oh, hello. This is only the second Q&A and he's already melting down in front of the fucking the medical student. Okay, fucking medical student. Where did the other half of the DNA come from? The father, as I explained to you. Right, but they fuse into a magical new set of DNA. Where did you come from?
Again, this comes from what you define as where life starts. You can say life starts at conception, but I'm telling you, I believe that's just an arbitrary point, right? That's just the moment these two cells fuse. Now, you say about this mother thing. So the way DNA is arranged in a cell is it's arranged in chromosomes. Chromosomes are paired up, so you have one from the mother, one from the father, typically, in a healthy individual, right? Now, you can take those maternal chromosomes out and you can find that this is who the person's mother is, and you can do the same with the father. Now, the reason you are different to your mother and father is because some of those chromosomes express genes that are different from each other, and so those genes interact, and that's what gives rise to you, right? But there's no space for any kind of moral framework to come into that until you consider that a human being is capable of consciousness and of suffering. But if you take that out of the equation, the fact that these two DNA, whatever they call molecules, right? These two DNA molecules are fusing. That does not suddenly flip a switch that attributes moral worth to that individual.
Bevon, listen. Good boys.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not trying to score points. I'm trying to understand.
By what moral standard do you believe that?
I believe that if an individual is capable of suffering, then it's wrong. Now, can I explain my opinion on abortion, just so you can understand? I would agree, as many reasonable people would, that at 9 months, it's unreasonable to expect someone to get an abortion, right? Unless you have some extreme circumstances. But for an elective abortion seems a bit radical to me. But it also seems radical to say that a woman who has just, the cells have just fused, to deny her of an abortion also seems wrong to me. Because that zygote is not capable of suffering, as far as we know.
So by what moral standard? Is that just your opinion? Where did you get that moral standard from?
Because suffering is a bad thing. We all know suffering is a bad thing. That's an objective fact, right?
Well, hold on. So you do believe in objective morality?
I believe that suffering is an objectively negative
So if you can't feel it, is it okay?
What do you mean if you can't?
You can't feel the pain, is it okay to inflict the pain?
In the sense that if no one's suffering from it, if you have a scenario where nobody is suffering from something, then yes, of course. There's no...
Well, yeah, you're basically describing modern surgery. You don't just sit there screaming. It's like, doctors cut you open. They usually anesthetize you.
There's no something is only a moral question if it affects someone's well-being.
So let me just make sure I understand this correctly. That if it doesn't affect their well-being, so dementia patients that don't know who they are or where they're from, can we execute dementia patients because they're confused about their well-being?
Finally got to one of them. He was like, oh, this is a little bit tricky. I got to navigate this a little bit more. I can't just simply state things about, DNA that I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. But here we go. All right. So, yeah. Are you okay with executing people who are in comas? That's what it sounds like. Got him.
Can you imagine a scenario?
Or Alzheimer's patients.
Charlie,
Alzheimer's patients don't really know much about anything. Can we schedule them for execution because they can't technically suffer?
No, respond. So, can you imagine a scenario where we lived in a society where we killed people when they suffered from dementia, were incapable of suffering, and we killed them, right? It's not a scenario that involves an absence of suffering. There's still suffering involved. Imagine you grow up thinking, my dad could be killed at any moment because he's going to get dementia. Imagine living your life thinking, I could get dementia and suddenly I'd be killed by my state.
Imagine a world where you slaughter 1 million babies every year in America.
Charlie, it's not slaughter. That's the problem.
Hold on. It's a forcible removal from the umbilical cord.
Just so we're clear, what he's getting at is the fact that a zygote is incapable of conscious thought, and because of that, I don't think that we should be endangering the lives of women or removing their bodily autonomy, simply because Charlie Kirk believes that a zygote is magical.
Of another human life. Again, we have clarity but not agreement. Biologically, you know that your entire coding began at conception. your coding,
No, that's
your
what
uniqueness.
I'm denying. I disagree with that.
Okay, when those two cells fused together, to use your terminology,
Yes.
that is where the process of
scientifically
human
accepted terminology.
In the interest of time, can we bring this question to a
the
close?
process of human development objectively begins at that moment. Therefore, those human beings are deserving of human rights. We keep going, or do you want to?
No, thank you. Yeah, you can finish.
The process of development begins from the moment the sperm is being generated in the father, the moment the eggs are being generated in the mother. To say that suddenly the moral worth switches on when they fuse doesn't make any sense. That's just a point you've taken.
It makes perfect sense, because that is when your journey as a human being. When the sperm and egg were separate, you were not yet
That's
a
when the magic
fused
begins.
human being. You were not created uniquely.
DNA
in
existed.
any image.
Your DNA existed. I thought.
Well, no, the parts of your DNA existed. Your DNA did not exist. It's like saying that we have a full car just because we have all the parts. It was not yet put together until conception happens and the zygote was formed. Thank you. I think we have to get
Can we move on to the
Thank
next
you very
question,
much.
please? Thank you.
I thought it was pretty good. I wouldn't let Charlie Kirk touch me after.
So,
But then that.
thank you. Our fourth question tonight is from Rudy Ellis-Jones from Emmanuel College.
Hello, thank you for coming to today's talk. So my question, as someone studying archaeology and biological anthropology, I've learned that moral codes and social norms have always been fluid, shaped by time, culture, power. So many ancient and recent societies embrace same-sex relationships and even the idea of third genders well before Western conservatism even existed. So when you claim that modern conservative values represent some kind of universal, objective moral truth, like you said on your chair over there, aren't you just defending a selective, historically recent ideology that erases most of human history and targets people who have always been part of it?
No, but can you point to me of a... and maybe you can educate me. Can you point to me?
Well, a lot of sheeple there. Just people who are like, he said no. It was, yeah, epic. Yeah, I schooled him.
Me a great power that endorsed same-sex marriage, not cohabitation, but marriage.
Ancient Mesopotamia.
As marriage, as recognized.
As marriage that exists.
Recognized by the state.
100%.
And how did that work out for them?
It worked out perfectly fine. It was an accepted norm of society.
Okay, I still think it's wrong.
Amazing. I mean, yeah. He's sticking to it. You got to give him that. Teach me something I don't know. Okay. Yeah, well. Still gross.
Okay, swiftly moving on. So you said it was based on scripture and you believe that there are moral,
Correct, yes.
objective, universal truths.
Yes, there are.
So
murder is wrong today and murder was wrong 2,000 years ago.
Right, okay, fair. That's not same-sex, but fair. I see your point. But
There are moral truths that are transcendent of time, place, and matter.
okay, but so just to clarify, you believe that this is in the Bible. This is laid out in the Bible that man shall not sleep with man, and so therefore...
Well, it's also repeated throughout the New Testament as well. In the book of Matthew, Jesus reaffirms the biblical standard for marriage.
Okay, so I'm going to make two very, very quick points. So the first, so if we look at the Old Testament in isolation, just to start off with as an example, so let's look at Exodus 35:2, which suggests that if you work on the Sabbath, you should be put to death. If you look at Leviticus 11:7, it suggests that if you have pork, you should be put to death. Let me finish, I'll be done. If you plant two crops side by side, you should be stoned by your entire village. If you wear a suit, which you are wearing now, that contains two different fibers intertwined into the same jacket, you should be burned at the stake by your own mother. Now, following that rationale, in Leviticus 18:22, when it states that man shall not sleep with man, why aren't we burning ourselves at the stake as well? Why aren't we stoning ourselves to death?
Do you care to address my main contention that Christ affirmed biblical marriage in the book of Matthew? And can you tell me the difference between the ceremonial, the moral, and the ritual law? And then
So he's got no answer.
finally, also, tell me about Christianity, the difference between the new and the old covenant, or are you just going to cherry pick certain verses of ancient Israel that do not apply to new Christianity?
No, fair. I completely agree. So we'll look at 2 points then. So firstly, if we look at the Old Testament, we can see the kind of inconsistencies there. We've already touched upon that, right? That makes sense. Secondly, you mentioned the point of Jesus and Christ. He never mentioned anything to do with homosexuality at all.
Well, hold on a
In
second.
the Bible.
No, he affirmed biblical marriage as one man and one woman. He said a man shall leave his
Romans,
father's
right?
house.
In the New Testament.
No, in Matthew, that is not correct. I believe
In the New Testament.
In the New Testament. Well, Romans is also in the New Testament. Secondly, in Romans 1, the Apostle Paul talks negatively about homosexuality explicitly. Also, homosexuality is repeated in the book of Titus and in the book of Jude as not being favorable as the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Not even talking about the
Wait, I mean, this all really just boils down to Charlie picks and chooses what he wants, right? I mean, that's usually the case with someone who wants to be a religious fundamentalist. This is basically me trying to cater this to my own beliefs. But you can't have beliefs without the book, even though I am catering what I interpret to be the book's beliefs to be my beliefs. But morality is derived from religion. Remember that.
Old Testament verses. There are 3 types of the 613 Levitical laws, and you know, of course, in your own way, cherry-picked some of them. We do not live under the ceremonial, we do not live under the ritual, but we do live under the moral. There's only 10 of the moral that we as Christians believe we're bound to. Some believe 9, which of course is the Decalogue. And so none of those that you mentioned we as Christians believe that we live under. However, we do look at what Christ articulated as the biblical standard of marriage. And we can also look to church tradition for this as well. And the church has had a tradition for well over 2,000 years. Even myself as a Protestant acknowledges that tradition is marriage between one man and one woman.
And fair point. But, okay, say we put aside the Old Testament for now. We'll put that aside and the inconsistencies there, and we'll look purely at the New Testament following your rationale, okay? Now, when you say that Christ lays specifically, and the New Testament states specifically that man shall not sleep with man, I'd like to point out a linguistic error on that point.
I did not say that. I said the biblical marriage was affirmed, and then Romans 1 did talk negatively about the action of homosexuality.
But ultimately,
it is a fact.
that affirmation comes from 8 lines in there that suggest that man shall not sleep with man.
Yes, of course, yes. The Old Testament and New Testament harmonize one another, but Christ brought it to a different level, a different covenant, and a different moral teaching. It wasn't just enough to say that you shall, man shall strike eye for eye, it's that you shall turn the other cheek, that you shall...
None of you are getting into the kingdom of heaven. Are you serious? Is he trying to pass off that he follows the teachings of Christ and not the Old Testament Bible? I thought Charlie Kirk would have been an Old Testament fucking old-timey religion fella. You know, that's the kind of stuff that he likes. He loves the old fucking vengeful God, genocidal God, petty, spiteful God. But no. I'm here to basically bestow upon the teachings of Jesus. Specifically, to turn the other cheek, to do no harm unto others that you would want done unto yourself, that a rich man will never see the kingdom of heaven, to not covet possessions, to not be distracted by capitalism, that kind of stuff. Those teachings. That's what I'm all about.
Love your enemy. Christ's moral standard was much more even elevated than that of the Israelites and the Hebrews.
Well, I'm going to ask you whose Bible, okay? Now, your Bible that you use currently is written in the English language, right? Correct?
Yeah, the King James Version, yes, thanks to Tyndale.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's written in the English language, which in itself is only, say, 500 years old. Now, but the Christianity in itself, say, is 2,000 years old or even older, yeah? Correct? Now, which means that the Bible was originally written not in English, but in ancient
Koine Greek.
Huh?
In Koine Greek.
Yeah, correct. Now, if we look at the Greek terminology of man...
Yes, and Jesus spoke Aramaic. You could translate things, you acknowledge that.
Well, we translate things, but translations are linguistically ambiguous. As a former classicist, I know that language can't be translated directly. So, for example, if we look at the translation of certain words into man, so I've got 2 words here. So I've got malakoi, which means essentially soft, which isn't necessarily directly saying a gay man. And
I'm loving this. It's all just like cocky, highly educated Cambridge students who I guess are just not right-leaning as Charlie Kirk would have hoped and are just fucking rolling him on his own topics.
And then we've got oh God, how do I say that? Arsena koitai, which essentially means prostitutes. Now, if we look at things linguistically, we can pick apart the Bible and say that actually it wasn't saying man shall not sleep with man, it's saying man shall not sleep with prostitutes, which is an entirely different linguistic thing.
I'm not even getting into Leviticus, though.
But no,
my contention is completely New Testament focused.
This isn't Leviticus.
What you said, man shall not speak another man. So you're talking about Romans 1.
Well, okay, these words are used throughout the
entire Bible. Well, actually, in Romans 1, it was actually women sleeping with women. So you got your verses wrong. In Romans 1, Paul is prophesying about the end of the world, and he's saying that in the end times, woman will like with woman like, and man will, I think it might say man will like, men like. You have to get the verses specifically. But it is agreed upon, and you can agree. This is why tradition is important, and I even say this as a Protestant, is that we believe that Scripture is very important, but also look to tradition. Church tradition has had an unbroken chain affirming matrimony, holy matrimony being one man, one woman. One, even as a non-Catholic, I'm glad that Pope Leo has reaffirmed in the last couple of days And so I'm not even sure your contention, your point. Are you saying that the Bible doesn't affirm marriage as one man, one woman? Or are you saying church tradition doesn't affirm marriage one man, one woman?
The Bible doesn't affirm.
Okay,
Well, clearly doesn't affirm.
That is complete nonsense.
But it's not. It's a linguistic error. And it's debated.
But Christ our Lord, which is the standard, he affirms this idea that you will leave your father's home. Going back to Genesis 12 and this idea of Abraham leaving his father's home, and you will cleave to your wife. That it'll be called one. In fact, this idea of a new creation, which is something that is then used by the Apostle Paul to describe the church of Christ and the bride of the church, and the church being the bride of Christ with Jesus. So I'm not even sure your contention. It is.
Yeah, but you're just avoiding my point. I'm saying the Bible that we have today is 100% a translation, and a translation
I acknowledge that.
Ambiguous.
And well, hold on. But what about specifically in Matthew or in the book of Romans? And but in order for you to be correct, you mean the church fathers translated it wrong when they were within like 50 years of this. In order for your contention to be correct, you have to say that the early church fathers that wrote the early letters to the church, they were translating it wrong, and the tradition they established was wrong. So by then we can lean on tradition and scripture. So when you get tradition plus scripture, you get something that is authentic, that is real, and that is verifiable.
I've already highlighted that tradition does not align with scripture. We've gone back thousands of years to ancient Mesopotamia.
But understand, but at the time, they all spoke Greek, they wrote Greek, and they spoke Aramaic. So, for example, when they were writing the early Gospels, the synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they were obviously writing in Greek. They knew that language. So in Matthew, when they were writing Greek, and then the early church fathers knew Greek and adopted that as church tradition, we have a 2,000 unbroken chain, I think you can irrefutably say that it was the teachings of Christ for one man and one woman. Because the church tradition has been unbroken for 2,000 years, and they derived it from scripture of that original language.
You can't argue that. That makes sense. I mean, if we agree to disagree, then why don't we look at biology?
So you know better than the church fathers?
No, I don't. I'm not saying I know better than the church fathers. What I'm saying is, linguistically, there is undeniably an error. Regardless of what you say, that is
our lens, maybe, but not from the people when they were making these traditions.
I agree. They may have got that right, but that may not have been their original meaning. What we're saying is the meaning has been warped over time because societal and cultural context, such as the British Empire.
Can we start bring this question to a close, please?
It can be, but that is why tradition matters, because the tradition, they understood the context.
Tradition is context dependent.
Well, yes and no, because of course tradition is, but if the tradition lasts for 2,000 years, then we look back as to how did they get to that conclusion, how did they reach that verdict? And if that verdict is in alignment with what we see in Scripture, it means that their verdict was correct in Scripture.
They never reached that verdict. As I have historically pointed out, they never reached it.
In all of the major church councils, it was very...
The modern day.
Well, no, I'm talking about in like 300 and 400 and 500. The original
which in the scale of 2,000 years is nothing.
No, but they set this unbroken chain. We've had an unbroken chain in a course that says that marriage is one man and one woman. The church has never wavered on this.
Noted by the British Empire under British form of Christianity.
I'm talking all the way back to like 200 or 300. The idea of biblical Christianity goes back to the early times of the church, when it was a scattered, persecuted church well before King Justinian and well before the Eastern Roman Empire, well before mass conversions. When it was a persecuted church, the church believed in one man, one woman, and because they got it from the scripture itself. Do we want to keep going, or?
Can we move on to the next question, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Damsith Wimalasena from Lucy Cavendish College. Thank you.
Hello, Charlie. Thank you for being here. Just before I start with my question, I wanted to address something you said earlier on sort of Western Christian values being the reason for the abolishment of slavery globally. I'm not sure whether you know this. I've seen you repeating this quite often. I'm a practicing Buddhist, and it was actually Buddhism, Buddhist emperors, Emperor Ashoka of India, who first abolished slavery globally. So I would ask you to sort of look at other sort of...
I will look into that. You did it globally? They had that much, the Buddhists had that much span of influence?
Within India.
Okay, I'll look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, my first question, or my only question is, you've advocated and applauded the reducing and removing of public funding for universities on the grounds they promote ideological biases. Given that universities play a critical role in driving national innovation, research, and upward mobility, especially through federally funded grants, how do you reconcile this position with the broader societal value that higher education institutes offer?
Well, they can, but in Harvard's case, for example, who's getting their funding pulled, they have a $50 billion endowment. Just so we are clear, in pounds, that would be like what, 42 billion, 45 billion? I mean, I'm trying to learn the conversion rate here. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of money. They can either use their endowments to fund it, and if you have certain behavior and certain practices, then you should not get federal funding. Harvard is in direct violation of the United States Supreme Court fair admissions case, which says you cannot discriminate people based on the color of their skin. Go ahead.
But isn't the whole point of it, you can't use endowments like that. The point of
They can.
The point of an endowment is to manage a fund through perpetuity. Cambridge has an endowment, and that endowment allows professorships to be funded to allow for research into sciences. That's the whole point of an endowment.
Hold on, you just said it funds research into sciences. That's what they should do with their monstrosity of an endowment.
Yeah, but the endowment is,
The interest alone on their endowment could fund the entire research and development budget of most Ivy League schools. They have a $50 billion endowment. Even like a podunk money manager in America can earn a 7 to 10% investment in the markets the last couple of years. That's $5 billion of returns that endowment could then reinvest in whatever they want. Instead, Harvard has become a hedge fund with a radical school attached. And I think that's very wrong for US taxpayers to continue to subsidize.
But it's not just Harvard. You've called on colleges being a scam. You've constantly attacked higher education institutes. You've attacked liberal arts as a scam. For example, like a lot of conservatives, Peter Thiel studied philosophy at Stanford. Ronald Reagan studied sociology. A lot of them did study liberal arts, and you keep undermining these august institutions, which have provided a lot for society. Like society's backbones have been universities and higher learning institutes, and yet you keep attacking them.
Well, they used to be largely, but again, I don't want to speak too much about this country, but in America, they don't represent fundamental American values. You know, Peter Thiel, after he graduated Stanford, wrote an entire book criticizing college and then paying people not to go to college. So Peter Thiel, who spoke at this very school, and you guys had a great conversation with him, do you know that he believes college is such a scam? He would pay people $100,000 a year for 20 years straight not to go to college. So not exactly a good argument in your favor. Peter Thiel, who got a philosophy degree, made billions of dollars, and has now forked over tens of millions of dollars for people not to go to US universities and colleges.
Yeah, but it's not just Peter Thiel.
I know, but you mentioned him, I didn't. But to complete the point is that...
As Thomas went to, did liberal arts.
Look, in America, there are far too many people going to college. We need people to become welders, electricians, people that work with their hands. There is a major trade deficit problem in the United States. We have 11 million well-paying jobs that we cannot find enough labor for, and instead we have a lot of people going to university to go study North African lesbian poetry. It might sound good, but it doesn't necessarily, A, either development, the content, the character, or the development of the soul, and B, it does not necessarily also give you the skills necessary. Some college is good for you. I'm a big proponent of Hillsdale College.
You can basically tell just like, these are the things I don't like, and this is what I think that all these liberal institutions are teaching, so this is what's wrong.
Guys, can we please be quiet?
I believe Hillsdale College is America's greatest college, and I'm a big proponent of that. But I would ask a question. In your own words, what do you believe the purpose of college is?
It's critical engagement. But coming back to your point on lesbian poetry or whatever.
North African lesbian poetry.
North African lesbian poetry. So in the morning, I actually had a lecture on development policy. And one of the key authors on sort of development economics is Nussbaum, who talks about how liberal arts sort of engages you critically. And one could argue, even North African lesbian poetry, I don't think that's a degree, I think that's just a module within a degree.
Maybe.
Yeah. That makes you
The fact you don't know shows how rotten to the core universities have become.
You're taking one example and telling conservatives and hordes of young people that college is a scam. College isn't a scam. I mean, I took my mom down to a pub just down the road where Watson and Crick announced DNA.
Guys, can we, okay, wait one second.
If college is a scam, then DNA wouldn't have been discovered. With cancer research.
Yes, hold on a second. Yes, you're right. At this specific university, you guys split the atom. You had Sir Isaac Newton. You had some of the greatest minds of the West. I don't know about what's happening here, and I'm not going to criticize it. But at most colleges in the West, They've gone away from places of inquiry and appreciation of what is good and what is beautiful and into this incessant oppression Olympics of trying to deconstruct the core canon that is our birth certificate. I don't know if that's happening here. It's certainly...
That's not true, though.
In America, it is objectively true, okay?
That isn't true.
Again, no, first of all, they removed Western civilization as a core course in Stanford in the 1990s. They tried to bring it back with petitions, and the university said, no, teaching Western civilization is racist. Shakespeare is not taught at major... let me finish. Shakespeare is not taught at major universities across America because it's deemed as racist. I talked to some students earlier in the English...
Where is that the case? Which universities have banned teaching the works of Shakespeare, specifically because Shakespeare's racist?
English department, and they said, hey, I'm studying Shakespeare. I said, that's refreshing because in a lot of US schools, they don't teach Shakespeare because he's called racist. You would be surprised at how wretched to the core some of these colleges have become in America.
If you look at the Global Innovation Index, America, which is predominantly a lot of their majors are in humanities and liberal arts, they're number 2 on the Global Innovation Index. China is somewhere near 13. If you look at every metric, Fortune 1000 CEOs, 40% did humanities and liberal arts. There is a value in liberal arts, yet you're criticizing
it. Yes,
and
I'm going to keep on criticizing it. Also, the vast majority of liberal arts graduates do not respect freedom of speech. That is an empirical poll. They increasingly do not have reverence or gratitude for the United States of America.
So I was trying to look up if this has happened in any college in the United States, and I couldn't find any stories related to Shakespeare being banned in United States colleges. I did find this: why the Florida book ban has come for Shakespeare. Florida teachers are not going to use certain sections of William Shakespeare's works in their classes, cutting out any content that could be deemed to conflict with the state's new laws. Students in Hillsborough County will still learn passages from Shakespeare's classics, such as Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet, but if they wish to read the full text, they'll have to do so out of school hours. According to the Tampa Bay Times, school officials are no longer teaching content from a number of books and writings, amid new instructions resulting from revised standards across Florida. School district spokesman Tanya Arjad told the publication the moves were in consideration from the law. She referred to the Parental Rights and Education Act signed into law by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis that prohibits the school district from encouraging classroom discussions about sexual orientation or gender identity in the primary grade levels or in specific instances. Violation of the law can result in a school district being ordered to pay damages and reasonable attorney fees and court costs. Hillsborough County Public Schools Board has member Jessica Vaughn shared her concerns. Many of the decisions are causing a tremendous amount of anxiety and concern. I'm extremely disappointed. So it would appear that it's the right who are banning Shakespeare, maybe if not intentionally. There's some raunchiness in Shakespeare, because that's what sold tickets in his time. I think the rest of the nation, no, the world is laughing at us. Taking Shakespeare in its entirety out because the relationship between Romeo and Juliet is somehow exploiting minors is just absurd. King's College London professor of Shakespeare study, Dr. Sonia Masai, told Newsweek that censorship and reduction in parts of Shakespeare's work are not new and have occurred over several centuries, including the 1640 edition of his poems that swapped pronouns in the love text sonnets from male to female, conforming to heterosexual norms of the time. Masai said, I can understand that extracts and shortened text can be more practical for younger children, but for high schools, it's important to teach the text and to do so slowly and chronologically, as the plays are carefully constructed and reading only in part can distort your perception of the text. It is important to be more mindful of the approach of such as gender, race, and nationality with care is something that is quite damaging, but cutting it back limits the freedom of teachers. You did this, Charlie. You and your crew. But yes, it's the woke colleges that are canceling Shakespeare.
They don't care about the core values of the U.S. Constitution. If you want to go to college, that's fine. But in our country, 40% of kids that enter college do not graduate. The kids that do graduate, half of them end up getting jobs that do not require any sort of college degree. There are all these made-up degrees. In America, I know it's different than the experience you might be having here. Your tutoring system here is objectively great. I'm glad you guys have it. The class sizes in America are 400 to 500 students, sometimes per introductory course, to go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt, study things that don't matter, to find jobs that do not exist. And so let me just make one final point, is that, of course, some people should be going to college, but generally in the United States of America, it has become a racket of debt, it has become a burden, and a place where we're actually not putting our best and brightest into the job field itself to be equipped for the jobs of the future. Instead, we have a lot of baristas at Starbucks with philosophy
No,
degrees.
Charlie Kirk's not
You
Canadian.
also mentioned
He's an American
indoctrination.
original.
As per the Oxford Dictionary's definition of indoctrination, it means that you take a belief and you can't critically observe that belief. Turning Point USA has over 30,000 chapters, 3,000 chapters across US universities. So are you arguing that students, including conservatives, lack the critical thinking skills to sort of decide political ideologies, political beliefs, that they're so dumbfounded that they can't decide for themselves what's right and what's wrong, and that your whole premise is on the fact that students like us, we lack critical thought in deciding what is taught in schools?
Again, I'm not using Cambridge as the school that I think of, but in America, we have millions of people that go to these massive state schools that have humanities departments that are not reading the great books, that do not have a tutoring system, that are unfortunately laced with the most anti-Western thought imaginable. I don't really quite following what one thing has to do with the other, why 3,000 chapters has something to do with your indictment. Maybe you can clarify, but I think we're out of time.
You can clarify, but then we'll move on.
In general, colleges should be a place that lift you up to what is good, true, and beautiful, to study the great things that have been, to develop your soul and develop your character. Character in Greek literally means like tattoo, to etch within you. Far too often, colleges create ungrateful, pessimistic, and nihilistic revolutionaries that want to tear down what was before and instead have no alternative to build the future, and the West is suffering because of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I disagree.
Keep in mind, the majority of the kids who are going to high-end universities and colleges are from rich-ass, like, fucking families. So, I mean, if it is turning all of their children into radical revolutionaries, uh-oh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question is from Archie McIntosh at Jesus College.
I imagine Jesus College probably is on board with Charlie.
It's good to meet you, Charlie. I hope you can understand first rule. I'm a little nervous. There's a very real chance I could wake up tomorrow, front page of YouTube. Charlie Kirk owns man bun idiot with facts and logic. So
destroys.
Yeah, destroys. Okay, so my question is, I agree that stable monogamous relationships often produce the best outcomes for society, but if that structure really works for everyone, why do we consistently see societies, once they become safer and more prosperous, move away from traditional monogamy? And why do so many marriages still end in divorce, even among people who generally try to make it work? And just one final framing there. If you believe in free markets because they are decentralized and they adapt to reality without top-down control.
Oh, don't ask three completely unrelated, well, two related, but one completely unrelated question.
Given the individual ability to form healthy long-term pair bonds very significantly with factors like genetics and ecologically calibrated attachment styles, why do you reject top-down control in economics, but not extend that same rejection to human behavior in terms of marriage?
Okay, so the first one, the second law of thermodynamics answers your question, is that it's the law of decay. Societies tend to decay against the roots
I don't think they're
that
going to have a
created
lot of
them.
disagreement. I'm
For
going on to
example,
the next student.
as a side...
Our next question is from Tilly Middlehurst at Fitzwilliam College.
So I'm a feminist. My question is about the role of women, though. What should women's role in public and private life look like, and what are the material benefits of that?
Well, thank you for that. Can I take it? I don't even want to take this detour, but can we both agree on what a woman is?
Yes. An adult human female, it's a biological state of being that is also socially experienced. Can I please elucidate just one example of that social experience?
Yeah, I was going to answer your question, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So let's say you're a member of a tribe, and that in that tribe, you have the biological female anatomy, and in order to become a woman in that tribe, you have to also get a tattoo. That's a social experience that's mapped onto biological reality.
So can a woman have a prostate?
Can a woman have a prostate? Biologically speaking.
Sorry, what was your question again?
A woman is an adult human female that has a biological reality, but it's also social experience, right? So I don't...
Yeah, it's super easy. Like, can a woman have a prostate?
So as per my definition of woman, I would say that people who have a prostate are biologically male, but they can sometimes be socially treated as women.
Okay, got it. So women can have prostates. Got it. Okay. So you're a feminist that actually isn't just fighting for women, you're also fighting for men.
So, yes, men also experience harms from patriarchy, but I argue...
We're talking about the same feminism, though, just make sure. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, men also experience harm from patriarchal domination, but I would argue that those harms come from that system of domination itself. In the same way, for example, this isn't a threat, but if I reached across and punched you in the face, then my hand might hurt, right? So, are we understanding that there are, patterns of power? So, I would also fight for the rights of men as a feminist, just as I would fight for the rights of women.
Sure. Do you think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
I think I would have a few responses to that. I think that women report more stress and dissatisfaction today because, not because they have more rights or because of feminism, but because they're under dual pressure to both excel professionally and also because of the domestic labor in homes that is structured around outdated expectations. So, for example, studies like the OECD's Better Life Index show that women's life expectancy, education levels, professional achievements have risen in countries with higher gender inequality. So I would argue that what you're calling unhappiness is actually visibility, because now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
Yeah. That's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny.
We've always been...
No, hold on a second. Why are...
Whoa, that one did not land. Not even amongst his own fans. There wasn't a single laugh in the room. Ouch. Bombing in front of your own crowd. That sucks.
Suicide rates going up more for women.
I think that
Forget
encourages...
complaining. Materially, women are killing themselves more. Why is that?
I think that even if both men and women have become unhappier, men's suicide rates have risen as well, and that's also been exponential. Can you at least concede that feminism offers only one potential explanation? There could be also other explanations.
And yeah, by the way, one of his points there was that, well, I mean, women are killing themselves more. Is that feminism? Are you going to answer that?
Obviously, but feminism is the glaring thing in front of us, where we have fertility rates down, we have marriage rates down, we have unhappiness up, and we did something in the 1960s out of the universities of Brady Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these feminists that basically said, you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control, and all of a sudden women are way unhappier than they were 40 years ago. And I just have to ask the question, why is that? Is it working? And maybe there are biological differences between men and women that we should respect, and that deep down a lot of women...
So the answer is not civil rights are bad, by the way. I mean, if you're looking towards why there's more anxiety, depression, higher rates of suicide, both amongst men and women, higher rates of anxiety or higher rates of depression, both amongst men and women as being reported, there's a variety of reasons to explain that. And it's not that people have achieved civil rights. That's, correlation does not equal causation there. It's one of those things where there's a number of increases in our ability to both diagnose. There's more accessibility than ever before for people to be able to reach and have, that criteria necessary to be able to be found to have depression or anxiety, that kind of stuff. There's the exacerbation of wealth inequality, which is obviously dramatically increased in the past 40 years. There's the inability to afford housing now, which is obviously a critical point for people who are younger, who are trying to make it in the world. Like there's social media, the influences of social media and how those have accelerated rates of depression amongst its users pretty much across the board. And even what are considered to be the more benign platforms, the ones that aren't distinctly supposed to harm your social health, your mental health, like Instagram, still have very high rates of reporting increased amounts of anxiety and depression based on their user bases. And now they've just become such an addictive, intrinsic part of society that, yes, those are definitely driving people towards more isolation and more depression, etc. None of that has to do anything with civil rights. Like the fact that women have gained more rights, that they're allowed to own credit cards and have bank accounts and own property in more legally represented ways and be able to fucking vote. Shit like that has nothing to do with being like, well, I mean, there's higher rates of depression amongst women now. That was feminism, right? I mean, that's probably the pill. That's probably not having a husband. That explains it.
Want to get married and have children. In fact, we should applaud it and we should support it, and we should say it means nothing if you're going to go be a CEO of some shoe company or be some banker in London. What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down long after you're gone.
I think I would bring 2 points to that. The first one is just really simple, which is that you can ascribe liberalism all you want as the cause of the unhappiness. I would argue something else. I would say that it's certain economic policy that has very little to do with the social acceptance of alternative lifestyles. I would say that we can recognize that income inequality across a vast swathe of Western countries has increased, which causes all kinds of social ills, a lack of social cohesion, housing price growth doesn't correspond with wage growth, monopolies increasingly become kind of emboldened to interfere with politics, and monopolies don't prioritize social health either. I think that those offer more compelling
Wow, she's spitting. I definitely had my doubts when she was wearing a giant American flag on her sweatshirt, but maybe that was a power move to just throw Charlie Kirk off.
Compelling reasons for a decline in happiness than an increase in freedoms, because just one more thing, on an intuitive basis, generally speaking, people want more freedom, not less.
Okay, so if that's true, why is it, do you agree that the happiest women of the West are married with kids?
I would have to look into it, but
Every
I think there are
study
certain,
shows, right?
there are certain
and
studies that
objectively,
do
we know that, right? The women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right? They're the ones that actually have obligations.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita?
Yeah. Wait, sorry. What's your metric for measuring women's happiness? It's whether or not they're tearing down statues. All right.
Data set that I wasn't aware of.
Again, it's like, it's a little bit of a one-liner. The happy and the grateful. The happy and the grateful usually don't go burn down Wendy's in their spare time, of which we saw in our country all throughout a single summer. But as a side note,
you're just airing grievances. It's like, I didn't like the Black Lives Matter movement, so what do you have to say about that? Oh, we're talking about feminism, right? So how many women burnt down buildings on behalf of the Black Lives Matter movement? I didn't like that.
you would agree, objectively, study after study, survey after survey, that the women of the West that are married and have children, especially a lot of children, are far happier than even the ones that earn more money correlated at the same age.
So I also don't think that happiness is a very good metric, and neither do you, because you think gay people shouldn't just pursue happiness by being gay. They have other moralistic considerations to be making. So I don't think smiles per capita is a particularly convincing way to measure whether or not we should encourage women to be autonomous. I think we should maximize agency within a fair system that has reasonable parameters because it's expedient, it's good for the economy, it's logical, it's the moral thing, because if we can't prove the material harms, we shouldn't discourage it. And also self-reported studies is a really flawed way to do psychology. It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk. If I took one of those surveys right now, I'd check extremely miserable, but so would a Palestinian child who's been torn to smithereens. How are we going to measure?
You would say extremely miserable?
No, I'm kind of making a joke.
No, I mean, but seriously, like, but hold on. I mean, like, that's an important point, though, is that the women in the West have it the best in the world, and yet they're way unhappier than women of sub-Saharan Africa. There's something fundamentally wrong here. Because the women of sub-Saharan Africa have something that a lot of women in the West do not have. The women in the West have cats and they have good jobs, and the women of sub-Saharan Africa, they have a belief in the divine and they have kids. And maybe there's a biological undercurrent that is keeping a lot of women from realizing their full potential. And so without reading your phone and just, like, you know, connecting.
I'm not really reading my phone.
Well, it's fine. Sure, then you can answer without it. Fair enough. Would you agree that it's a good thing that more women get married and have children in the West?
I would ask you, would you say that a sub-Saharan African woman who's experienced female genital mutilation and checks extremely happy in a survey, and I also would check extremely happy in a survey, who do you think would be objectively more happy, even if they both check the same answer?
No, again, so I fully, if you want to talk about how Islam mistreats women, we could talk all day long. Like, I'm all for that.
Me too.
Okay, good. So we agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
We actually have
agree on
agreement.
many things.
Then we should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
I think that all religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into the UK either.
Hold on. So hold on a second. Hold on. That's funny. Hold on. Can you show me what would your example, because I have 50, of a single Christian country that you would say mistreats women, right?
America.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We had a female woman vice president. We had a female vice president.
Oh my God, he's doing fucking democratic identity politics right now. Oh, we're the sexists. I'll have you know that we had a female vice president. So, checkmate.
Speaker of the House, women earn more than men in America.
In Rwanda, female representation in government supersedes the UK by quite a lot. Did women get treated better in Rwanda? Okay,
I might be super off this. Like, is Rwanda Islamic? Like, I'm not totally sure. I don't think it is. Like, is it? Like, I don't know, actually. It's not. So, again, we were just talking about Islam. It's a little bit of a side note, but you must be morally clear, because you brought up female genital mutilation, which is a teaching of the Islamic faith. But as a side note, like, again, this is very important, which is, I'm not here to require you to do anything or not. I'm making a simple observation, which is objectively true regardless. The women of the West are miserable, and they're miserable for a reason, because we've told them to suppress how they are made by God and pursue something else and get a bunch of trinkets and get a bunch of promotions, and they end up at 38 years old with a big flat in London, and they're miserable. And We should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
Yeah, okay. I think I'd bring two just final points to this. First one is just really intuitive, right? Which is that if you actually care about women's happiness, then the solution is to structurally support them. That means universal childcare, shared legally enforceable parental leave, and in Nordic countries where women have high workforce participation and also some state support, they report higher life satisfaction than in more conservative countries, including America. So if your metric is happiness,
just use satisfaction surveys. You just told me they're BS.
So are satisfaction surveys bullshit or not? Because you told me they're bullshit.
Do you acknowledge satisfaction surveys or not? You just told me that they're BS. Do you think they're objective? We can use that as data?
I don't think that
yes or no?
It is the only sole data set, but it is a data set that necessarily
you told me they're
matters.
so flawed and you self-report. Okay, by the macro self-satisfaction data, I am correct. And you are right. When you have paid family leave, you are happier. I'm actually a proponent of that. At Turning Point USA, we pay for 6 months when somebody has a child. I think there's a lot of agreement we can have on that. We need to encourage having more children.
Really?
I think the Hungarian child policy is phenomenal. We should look at that because the greatest thing that is plaguing...
Why wouldn't you want that for everyone if that's something you agree upon? Oh, but you just want it for the inner circle. That's it. Yeah, just people here that are working for Turning Point USA or, again, are rich enough to afford it.
In the West is we're not having enough kids. And it's not just bad because we won't have a future, it's also bad because the present is awfully miserable for too many women as well.
Okay, in which case I think we get...
Do I start bringing this to a close, please?
Okay, I think just one final thing, which is that in which case we get to a really interesting argument about what parts of womanhood can be demarcated to the social and what kinds of womanhood can be demarcated to biological. So, for example, my anatomy is demarcated to the biological, but the fact that I might potentially be a better nurturer than a man, I would demarcate that to the social, you might demarcate that to the biological, in which case we have differing moral scales of value. I would ask why we should necessarily prioritize your moral scale of value, which prioritizes things like the birth rate, when in actual fact there are various other moral scales of value. And if you yourself are a free market American, why is it the case that you would not, like the previous speaker noted,
I've already answered
extend personal freedoms towards all spheres, including a private sphere?
I believe in absolute truth claims, and it's absolutely wrong and bad when a society stops having kids to replace their own population. And then you have to import the third world and you become the third world. It's bad.
I disagree, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jay, thank you for the $2. Shakespeare's HS material. Did CK go to college? Yeah. Probably, actually.
Thank you. And the final question that we've got time for today is from Sammy McDonald from St. John's College.
Good evening, Mr. Kirk. You've obviously devoted a lot of your life to electing, keeping in power Donald Trump, and you did so partly because you said Trump would put Americans first and take them out of...
Kirk briefly attended Harper College, a community college near Chicago, but dropped out with having completed any degree or attaining a certificate.
Foreign conflicts. Should we see how that is going at the moment? Currently, Trump has just accepted a $400 million debt from Qatar, which we're assured is perfectly above board. Billions in arms are going to Saudi Arabia, which they're using to bomb and starve Yemeni children. Not sure how that's in the interest of the United States, but it might be in the interest of the $5.5 billion deal his failed sons are receiving. At the same time, this great president of peace has greenlit mass killings, not just in Yemen, but in Gaza, where he greenlit an invasion called Operation Gideon's Chariot, with the express aim of wiping out the Gazan population. You promised to put America first. Haven't you and your...
Someone saying he's giving Mighty Boosh energy? Yeah, but like in the good way, as in like complimentary.
...your ilk sold America out?
No.
Well, I'm glad you have great intellectual substance and can answer. Because it's all the culture wars for you, isn't it? The second someone actually tells you what you're doing, which is bread.
Can you calm down a little bit? Like, just a little bit? Pounding the table, you're all over the place. No. You want me to go?
Wait, that's the extent that he's got? Because he asked him a lot of legitimate questions, and all of a sudden Charlie's just like, no. Okay. Well, I don't know, Principal Chalmer. Is there anything more to this? Or do you have a response? Like, he's totally right. Like, as soon as someone actually brings up real life war crimes, atrocities that the United States is either enabling, funding, supporting in any way, shape, or form under this supposed anti-war president, that these are absolutely vile and disgusting. No.
Piece by piece? Or would you like me to talk slower?
I think you can...
Number one.
You said one fucking word. Are you understanding me? Huh? Is my understanding of the English language too complex for you, Cambridge students?
Donald Trump is convening a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Joe Biden gave them armaments.
Going well, isn't it? It's going well.
Can you not interrupt me?
Well.
I allowed you to talk uninterrupted.
You're famous for not interrupting.
Yeah, I haven't interrupted a single person here today. Can I speak uninterrupted, actually? Okay. He is convening a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. I believe we will see an end to that war. Number two, he's actually talking to Iran and discouraging Israel to strike the interior of Iran, and has stopped many other international countries to do the same. Number three, can you give him credit for ending the Indian-Pakistan
for anything you
war?
just said.
Both of them said he didn't do that.
Well, hold on a second.
Let's go back.
No, that's
Russia-Ukraine.
That's also true. There's not officials from Pakistan or India that were like, definitely. We were on the verge of a complete and total full-scale war until Donald Trump brokered peace, and thank God for him.
And that's important.
Can I speak now?
Yes, but the Indian-Pakistan thing, you got to go deeper than that.
Oh.
Let's go in order. Is a peace summit where the main person in question, Russia, doesn't show up, is that a success, Mr. Kirk?
I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure.
Is that a success?
Well, again, these are ongoing negotiations, and it's a lot better
that Putin didn't attend, just to be clear,
than when your prime minister, Boris Johnson, went alongside.
Oh my God, he's getting personal. What, are you going to put me on the fucking spot here? How about you? How about your fucking leaders? You losers.
Our Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, to Istanbul and unnecessarily blew up a potential Russian peace deal, which has resulted in hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians, one of the great unnecessary wars of the modern era. Donald Trump believes in conversation and police through strength. He has been president for well over 120 to 130 days, and he has already ended a war between two nuclear conflicts of India-Pakistan. He has secured our own U.S. southern border while we were being invaded by foreign powers. And thirdly, he is brokering a potential settlement with Iran that will prevent a major escalation in the Middle East. And finally, it is very difficult, but I believe they'll get it done, that will finally see an end to the Russian-Ukrainian war.
I'm just going to disregard the enormous lies you just put out there about Russia and Ukraine.
Nice. Also, I mean, the timing of this, I guess this was last week, so a little bit has changed, but I don't know if Charlie's seen recently that Trump doesn't seem to have the relationship with Putin that he originally thought. Do you remember? Day one. This war never would have happened if I was president. Day one, I'm going to end this war. Putin listens to me. We're going to be able to broker a deal right away, day one. And now it's, Putin is a madman. He can't be controlled. I have no idea what he's doing.
Right. But do you really think leverage negotiations work if you cut off all your leverage and scream at one party in the Oval Office? Don't you think that has just emboldened Russia? Because look at the approach. Putin thinks so much of your glorious president, he can't even be asked to show up. You have elected, or help elect, somebody who is at best an idiot and at worst is deeply corrupt.
Okay, again, so Trump and Putin had a 2-hour phone call today. You'll acknowledge that's a good thing. The pursuit of peace can sometimes be a winding road, and it's a lot better than sending hundreds of billions of dollars for.
Yeah, why is he sounding like a fucking Pinterest post right now? Look, I know he said literally that this was going to be a day one promise. Trump was going to end the war. Day one. I know he said that, but you have to understand it can be a long winding road. Sometimes you need to plant a seed to get a tree. All fruits don't fall to the ground first. You know what it is.
Further into the killing fields of eastern Ukraine, something that tragically both the UK government and the US government has been unnecessarily supporting for a couple of years. President Trump wants to see a brokerage, an ending of this settlement. I pray we can get it. It's very complicated because of the mess that Joe Biden left, which was an active kinetic war with a nuclear power sending American-made missiles into the interior of Russia. So President Trump has already ended a war. He's ended an invasion. He's only 130 days into this. And I believe, we do not know. At this point, we are merely speculating, which I think we should.
Putin hit 30 cities this weekend while this went on. It almost seems as if, I don't know, the student is kind of right. Like when you bring one of the two factions into the Oval Office just to berate them to please 4chan threads, that maybe this would embolden the other side to think, hey, but I don't even need to go to the negotiating table right now. I've got the president of the United States just basically trying to put this dude into a cuck chair and talk about why he's not wearing the right suit. This is awesome. Yeah.
Not spend our time doing that, because eventually one of us will be right. I believe we'll be right, and I believe we'll see an end to this war.
Can we just talk about 100 billion's worth of weapons? Because you dodged my question on what was going on in the Middle East, where Trump has just signed enormous arms contracts with Saudi Arabia and with Qatar. And I noticed you ignored the fact that this might have had anything to do with the blatant corruption going on through the Trump coin and going on through giving the very competent sons of Donald Trump billions of investment from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. This is something that is directly embroiling Americans into conflict, but is importantly killing many innocent people. Those nations have been known to terrorize innocent civilian populations. So if you're coming to me and you're objecting to America selling weaponry, why are you defending shilling for the Saudis?
Well, hold on. One is sending weaponry, one is purchasing. Secondly, you do know that the biggest purchase that was announced was commercial airliner, 737, $100 billion. We've heard of Qatar Airways. They purchased $100 billion of commercial airways. You are right, there were some weapons contracts. But I guess the question is, would you rather have Saudi Arabia buy weapons from America or China?
I'd rather they not have American weaponry.
I love that. At its principle, this is not about us selling weapons to regimes that are going to use them to, you know, perform the mass starvation of children in Yemen. That has nothing to do with it. Are they American-made or Chinese-made? Answer me, Britain. You want them to be American-made. You know you do.
At cut price rates.
See, I disagree.
Let's talk about Qatar for a second.
Okay, fine.
You mentioned Qatar. You've been talking a lot about Hamas and the evils of Hamas. Can I ask you, who's the main funder of Hamas?
Well, the Palestine. Well, the West actually funds Hamas.
Which state?
Well, Iran funds.
No.
Also,
where are the Hamas leaders?
West,
and
wait,
also
Iran
Qatar funds Hamas.
Yes.
It is a combination of international relief organizations.
Is this a state we should have a $400 million jet with the President of the United States on it?
Hold on. First of all, it was not given to him personally. I understand the optics of it, but it was not given to him personally. It was given to the U.S. government. And under that standard, no U.S. government should ever receive any gifts from any foreign countries whatsoever. It's not given to him personally and not a violation of the.
Then why is he trying to transfer it to his personal library? He is.
Actually, okay, again, he sent out
You're
a
lying.
statement. This is way too in the weeds. If you want to keep on going, we can.
It's not in the weeds. It's a fundamental moral principle.
Okay, so under that fundamental moral principle, then, can you acknowledge, though, that President Trump is getting more done in a less period of time than any president we've seen, while our prior president did not even.
Rather than talk about all the instances of corruption that you brought up right now, can we please just talk about how Trump is the greatest president of all time that we've ever known and maybe a God King Emperor on earth? Can we talk about that? Why are you scared to admit it?
Even know what year he got elected. You understand the contrast here?
What aboutism again? I'm not a defender of Biden.
No, I'm not saying President Trump is far better than the predecessor.
You have to defend the person you spent millions to elect.
I will defend every day of someone who ends an invasion.
That's all you do, is
brings down the price of oil, who is revitalizing the American economy, who's brokering peace, who stopped.
Erica, has this happened? I didn't know that. Wow. So Trump really was a miracle, all in a matter of months, really. Incredible.
Potential nuclear war, who is bringing Iran to the table and bringing Russia to the table, someone who does not want.
Bringing Iran to the table? What are you talking about? Every day there's a new headline where it's like Israel on the verge of like full-scale war with Iran. Will Trump allow it to happen? And he's like,
want armed conflicts with the greatest powers of our time. I will defend that endlessly.
Well, living
what are you defending?
in a fantasy world of your own creation, so it's quite hard to engage with.
But then disprove it.
Let's check.
True. That's true. Everything you just said is completely fantastical. You sound like you're in a cult. He's just like, could you agree that he's the greatest president of all time, that he's completely revitalized the U.S. economy, that he's brought all of these foreign jobs back to our country, that he has stopped all the wars, that he's increased our bounty, that he's made the house of pricing for housing, oil, gas, groceries, everything go down, that he is our salvation, that he's literally Jesus Christ come to return? Can you admit that?
On how Trump is doing in terms of diplomacy. Look, with the war in the Middle East, do you think it was a defensible decision to tell the Israelis you wanted Trump Gaza to agree for Israel to invade the Gaza Strip and to continue to murder thousands of innocent children and civilians in a pointless war? Is that in America's interest? Is that in humanity's interest?
Well, first of all, you should know something about Trump. There's something, if you realize with Trump over the last 10 years, he is quite the social media user and uses hyperbolic language at times. But let me ask you, in the conflict of Israel...
So just not going to answer anything. Not addressing any of the points he just said, but he was like, well, I mean, if you didn't know this, Trump, like, he does use truth. I don't know if you knew that. Not everything he says is 100%. So...
versus Hamas. Who's the good guy?
I believe both Hamas and the Israeli government are evil, but I think also that there is no justification.
Are they equally?
There is no justification for the murder and mutilation of thousands of innocent people and children in a futile...
let's zero in on it.
There is no justification, Mr. Kirk,
Hold on.
for invading hospitals, for bombing innocent populations and dragging out a war which is damaging Israel and the West's security.
You've made that point, but
Well, it's not a point, it's a moral truth, isn't
okay,
it?
yeah. It was also a moral truth that the war started because 1,300 Jews were killed and 200 were killed.
Did you feel him level up there? That he needed a couple seconds. He was revving, right? He's like, okay, all right, you've said your piece. Well, did you know that on October 7th? Oh shit, he's mad.
Hostage. And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction. Let me finish, I let you talk. Israel.
Oh yeah, now he's into condescending father mode.
Its holiest day of the calendar year besides Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, Samat Torah, the 50-year anniversary of the Six-Day War. On Shabbat, Hamas invaded Israel, deciding to go recklessly to music concerts, to homes, to kibbutzes, and taking 200 plus hostages. They knew what they were doing. In one of the most cloistered urban environments on the planet, 2 million people live in a place where it's impossible to wage war. Impossible. Where they wear civilian clothing, they violate every tenet of the Geneva Convention, and the IDF, when they do something right, they get no credit. When they do life-saving surgeries of a Gazan child, they get no credit. When they drive leaflets, drop...
Wondering how Charlie Kirk talks about, what he thinks about Jewish people on a regular basis, because he does this constant conflation where he tries to defend the actions of Israel by, conflating a state with all Jewish people, which itself is anti-Semitism. But he's got a pretty long history. Kirk blamed Jewish dollars for funding, quote, cultural Marxist ideas. According to Jewish Currents, cultural Marxism is an anti-Semitic trope that purports that Jewish people are attempting to undermine traditional American values. Kirk said that Jewish people control not just the colleges, the nonprofits. It's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it. Kirk also said the number one funding mechanism of radical open border neoliberal quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits is, quote, Jewish donors, claiming that wealthy Jewish people and donors control the majority of institutions in Hollywood are also common anti-Semitic tropes. Kirk did an anti-Semitic impression of a Jewish person while responding to a protest on the Cooper Union campus. Is that this one?
Was not slated to enter school property, which it obviously did. The New York Police Department was called as soon as I believe, but I'm going to need some more fact checking on this because it's so like, what? Come on. Librarians bolted the doors and approached the identifiable Jewish students and told them they could hide in the attic if they wanted to. Now, the reason I find that hard to believe, that is such a ridiculous syllogism to Anne Frank and hiding in the attic from Nazis. Like, really, they have an attic in the Cooper Union Library. I find that hard to believe. If that is true, geez, what are they going to tell them? Go upstairs and just go write a diary. Jeez. And I feel sorry for these Jewish students, but I'll be very honest with you. I don't feel sorry for these rich Jews that have been funding this crap. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't understand. Like, you guys have been underwriting this. Like, wake up.
That's why, it doesn't really count when people like Charlie Kirk try to weaponize things like, say, anti-Semitism or racism or discrimination, because he's a white supremacist who doesn't give two fucks about it. So him to try and weaponize identity politics or try to weaponize someone else's, prejudices or, their own racist statements against them, or try to weaponize the very idea that, hey, by the way, this was an attack on all Jewish people, rather than framing it for what it is, which is an illegal occupation that led to a violent resistance and then has led to a subsequent genocide by, again, the occupying force. But he wants to associate it with all Jewish people, and in the middle of a debate say, hey, this was the worst slaughter of Jewish people since the Holocaust. How dare you talk about this kind of thing? I clearly care deeply about this issue, but it seems when he's doing his own show, he's just constantly spreading anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, doing racist impressions, spreading lies, false rumors about, Jewish intellectuals controlling society. Kirk made a blatant statement about Jewish people, saying that in American Jewish society, there's an overcompensation to want to be liked, and Jews go above and beyond to give donations. Kirk said that secular and elite Jewish people who are pumping money into colleges and universities have been turning a blind eye to anti-Semitism. Kirk blamed elite Jewish culture for being one of the most main funding sources for elite colleges and universities that he suggested are breeding, quote, Jew hatred. On X, formerly Twitter, Kirk has repeatedly attacked Jewish people who have donated to American colleges and universities, sometimes by name. 1,000 Harvard students standing in solidarity with Hamas. Jewish donors are finally realizing that they've spent decades subsidizing Jew hatred on campus. Jewish donors, working their whole life, then give away massive sums to create activists who hate them more than anything, etc. In February 2020, Harvard Business School got its largest gift ever, $200 million from Leonard Blatvetnik, a Ukrainian Jew. Bill Ackman, an Ashkenazi Jewish descent, has given tens of millions to Harvard. There are thousands of them. Jews are some of the most. What's the rest of this one? Jews are some of the most generous funders of Americans' universities, from Harvard to NYU to Stanford to Ohio State. Liberal Jews also donated massively to Black Lives Matter. Wake up, American Jews. Stop subsidizing your own demise by supporting institutions that breed anti-Semites and endorse genocidal killers. And it goes on and on. So, yeah, I don't think Charlie Kirk cares about this.
Leaflets, they get no credit. But when they happen to bomb a place where they are operating their military from, which we now know from third-party verified sources, hundreds of Hamas military operations are in mosques, schools, and hospitals. I'm sorry, the country where they were living in relative peace on October 6th, that all of a sudden we had a war and Hamas started the war. And I don't see people that were really upset about the 2 million Germans that were killed in World War II, civilians. A tragic truth of war is that civilians die. I don't like it and you don't like it. And they brought it upon themselves. The only operation and entity to blame is the leadership of Hamas, not the Israeli government, for fighting this defensive war after they were invaded.
I'm no defender of the terrible pogrom that was launched against Jews on that day. But the justification for the death of innocents cannot be an infinite cycle of bloodlust. It cannot be killing tens of thousands of innocent civilians with a war with no end in sight, people who are not complicit in those atrocities. It cannot be bombing hospitals which children use. It cannot be bombing hospitals in which cancer patients are dying and starving in there. The deaths that have been inflicted, nobody knows the true toll, but somewhere between 50 and 100,000 people lie dead under the rubble. And what is left for Gaza except for to continue to suffer under Hamas? Because it turns out Netanyahu's political strategy has not worked. It has entrenched Hamas within the territories. To be a Christian, I would have thought, Mr. Kirk, would never have involved suggesting that the price for an atrocity must be an infinite cycle of bloodlust, that innocent people and the young population must be killed to avenge some kind of providential Christ. How can you call yourself a Christian? Well, you just did.
I want to make sure we get our moral clarity straight before we proceed. No one likes what's happening in Gaza. No one with a heart or a soul or a mind likes when kids die. But you must understand who started the conflict so that you could end it correctly. And until Hamas brokers an unconditional surrender, of which they are unwilling to do, they could release the hostages and drop their weapons and their lives would be spared. Instead,
they tried so many times, by the way. How many times since October 7th has Hamas said we agree to a ceasefire, or here are the terms of a ceasefire? We agree to a hostage exchange in response for a ceasefire. Israel is the one who has been, and this just happened recently, by the way. Just a couple days ago, there was yet another ceasefire agreement brokered to by Donald Trump and Hamas, both partners coming to the table and agreeing to, and Israel rejected it because that is not part of their goals or aims here.
They are using children of Gaza as cannon fodder, financed by the Iranian mullahs and dragging the entire world into this conflict. So,
do you realize how grotesque that sounds, too, to keep painting this picture that there's just literally a bunch of Hamas fighters just running around the streets of Gaza, holding up babies as shields, hoping that they don't get struck or shot or sniped or stuff like that? What does that say about you or the army that you're supporting? That that's just not something that is potentially even calculated to get around. It's like, yeah, well, just too many human shields, too many potential tunnels under that hospital, so we had to glass every single person there. Where was Hamas in the tents that just got burnt, where an entire family burnt to death and one kid escaped the flames only to watch her entire family and have to smell her entire family burning alive before her very eyes? Like, where is the Hamas there, to still be repeating these same talking points at this stage? Again, it's just like so far beyond.
I don't even know what we're debating at this point, other than I believe that I believe the facts. Israel was unconditionally attacked on October 7th. They're responding in kind. And I would just ask you a very simple moral question. How should Israel have responded?
Not with the blanket carpet bombing of the city, not with...
Stop occupying Palestine.
Bombing hospitals. Of course, some kind of military operation might have been necessary, but not murder on this scale. there is no justification for what is happening with the enormous death toll that is being produced. I really cannot see how you come here and you have the gall to lecture us on Christian morality and then sit here and justify the murder of thousands of civilians. And is it working, Mr. Kirk? Is Hamas dismantled?
I've never said that.
You just did.
Well, no,
this is your whole...
And also keep in mind when he's like, and you know, all that needs to happen is that Hamas has to unconditionally surrender and step down. It's like, how many Hamas leaders, commanders, generals have been assassinated at this point? Like literally all the top brass have been killed. And then like it's a couple weeks later, yeah, they have once again crowned a new leader of the Hamas organization. He's been taken out in a drone strike. There's a new leader. He's been taken out in a drone strike. Once again, we have another leader. He's also been taken out in a drone strike. It's like, yeah, at this point, like everyone can see with our eyes what's left, that is literally just like an apocalypse and it's just sheer destruction. To think that this is something in which, oh yeah, I mean, like, you know, this is a war. And a war is, again, a battle between two opposing, yet equally, potentially morally equal factions. And in that, both sides are doing their best. And unfortunately, right now, for the Palestinians, they are losing. But I mean, that is war, and war is ugly.
In war, these are called casualties of a war.
We're going to need to stop bringing this
again.
To close.
I'm not going to justify every military maneuver of a 100,000 person army. Instead, what I will do is I'll be clear that there is a good guy and there is a bad guy. I honestly...
Isn't that the morality of a child?
Well,
yeah, no shit. There's good people and there's bad people. And the people I think are the bad people, I mean, it's totally fine if there is literally 500,000 children starving to death right now. Right? Maybe more, actually. I mean, the population of Gaza prior to, again, the genocide was 2.2 million people, half of whom were children. Estimates range between 150,000 to 500,000 people potentially dead, a lot of them under the rubble and unidentified so far. So, yeah, you could be looking at nearly 1 million children being forcibly starved right now, actively. But they're the bad guys, so it doesn't matter.
Hold on. It's interesting you say that, because a child who knows that Israel is the good guy, Hamas is bad, has a lot more wisdom than a student like yourself at Cambridge University.
So you admit you're a child. That was a retort. Well, at least this child, this baby man who needs his diaper, at least he knows who the good guys are, unlike you.
I will be glad that I will not have been somebody who has defended the genocide of the Palestinian people. And I think you will have to reckon one day that you have reckoned with...
Interesting. I want to close on this. So can you tell me what African countries...
Of course, classic Charlie Kirk. Either way, very, very profound statement there. It's true. He is never going to see the kingdom of heaven. We know that. I mean, at this point, it's during the course of this debate, one thing that became completely apparent is scientifically, Charlie Kirk is never getting into the kingdom of heaven. He will not be allowed.
Is currently ongoing a civil war?
Believe it or not, I know about Sudan because I'm not an idiot.
How about what Southeast Asian country has an ethnic cleansing going on right now?
Myanmar.
Good. And you have strong opinions on both sides?
Unlike you.
Was that a gotcha? That's amazing. I was hoping Charlie would keep going. I bet he could land a whole bunch of them. He's like, where is there currently a very, very violent civil war from a country that has been destabilized in part due to the colonization of both France and then subsequently by America? Haiti? Yeah, well, did you pick a side there? What's your side? Did you have another example? Where is there another civil war in which there has been a previously affiliated Al-Qaeda member and organization which have come to now become the current freedom fighters that are leading the country, and it actually became a proxy war between numerous different factions, including, you're talking about Syria? Yeah, I know about Syria too. What else you got?
An effort to be informed about foreign policy and to come to conclusions. You are a culture warrior. I believe when everything is done, Mr. Kirk, people will see you and the people you supported as corrupt, as selling the country out to the lowest bidder, and of doing irreparable damage to a country I'm sure we all deep down love.
The difference...
I think you will have to reckon with that.
The difference
Mr. Kirk.
is when...
Nice, drop it, drop it. Nice, nice, nice. Oh, that's beautiful. leave him with nothing but his expanding forehead to contend with. That is now his nightmare to live within, trapped there for all eternity. Beautiful, fucking mic drop. Oh, amazing. Yeah, that was my favorite one. You know, of all of them, I think that one ended the very strongest. And no, I'm not going to be giving final word. I mean, you know what this really was, though, was it seemed like a collection of what I could only probably politically identify as most likely center-right liberals, for the most part, taking on Charlie Kirk. But a few of them who obviously are not only incredibly educated on the topics they wanted to talk about, but were capable of taking things beyond just the simple, well, Charlie Kirk's basically going to sit there and he's going to set up a trap for you. It's really hard to avoid his traps. He's very sneaky, right? But it's only a matter of time before he'll bring up sub-Saharan Africa, or he'll bring up female genital mutilation, and then you know, you're gonna have to respond to that. I mean, you're gonna have to have an answer. Are you pro that? If you're not pro that, then you know, I mean, he wins. So you got to be careful. He's sneaky. You know, most of them will end up as bad Starmerite MPs. You know, that's probably the sad truth of all this, is that, like, as amazing as some of those moments were, there's probably going to be 2 or 3 that eventually down the road are just going to be terrible Starmer MPs. Well, that's if Starmer's still around. I think he'll probably get the outing pretty quickly. But yeah, that was very entertaining.
So you may have noticed some different music playing at the start of the show. That's because I wanted to make some new music with Chico. I'm going to upload a bunch of different themes to patreon.com/the Serfs, where you can be the first to hear and vote on your favorite one, and then it'll become the official theme song for the show. And if you can't support that, hey, no worries, it'll all be available free at soundcloud.com/the Serfs TV. It's also in part a project to try and learn and revitalize the Michif language, which is the Métis language, and unfortunately, considered one of the world's languages, is currently going extinct, unless we keep teaching it.
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/the Serfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Saline, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwick, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons. Head on down to patreon.com/the Serfs. That's patreon.com/the Serfs.